Hi, everyone. Welcome in. Hello, hello. Welcome to Striving to Thriving, Crafting Gentle Goals. Question in the chat, what would you like to gain from today's workshop? Feel free to share in the chat. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. Welcome, everyone. Hope everyone's enjoying their Thursday, getting settled in. I know for me, I'm looking forward to a perspective on what gentle goal setting is. Goals don't always feel gentle. And so I'm excited to learn more about what gentle goal setting looks like. Love to hear from folks in the chat what you are hoping to get out of today's workshop. Alexis, that's so real. Definitely a tension between both. Oh, Jake says something different than the standard advice. I agree with that. All right, I think we can go ahead and get started with housekeeping. Please feel free to continue sharing in the chat what you're looking forward to. But hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Kayla, and I'm a host here at Focused. Before we begin, we have a couple of housekeeping items. Due to the significant number of attendees, we ask that everyone please remain on mute throughout the duration of this workshop, and then we'll answer questions at the end. And if you have questions, please type them into the chat and we'll do our best. And all right, so with that being said, thank you everyone for being here. If you're new to Focus Space, we're a pretty special virtual co-working community. We host daily, weekly, monthly, seasonal, yearly planning and events such as these. And we're kind of like a gym for getting things done. So if you're curious to know more, I will put a link in the chat where you can get 1 free month of Focus Space. And with that, I'm really excited to introduce our host of the event this evening, Aja. I'll let you go ahead and tell us more about you.
All right. Thanks everyone for being here. I am Aja Marsh. I am a ADHD coach. I also work with multi-passionate, ambitious adults and have been coaching since 2015. And I've said 2015 like 5 times today, and it's 2018. I don't know why I'm trying to lie. But I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico, by way of Brooklyn and Florida and Texas and all sorts of places. And and so I'm really excited to get into all of this with y'all. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you a little bit more about myself while we kind of look at this key topic slide, because when I first started coaching in 2018, I was working with folks around financial wellness. That's kind of how I first started. And I also was coaching people in running. So I'm always doing the most. That's just something to know about me. And so the more of that I did working with people around their money and around running, I realized that really I'm just talking to them about their goals, like the bigger goals and ambitions they have for their life. And I really love talking to people about goals. And so I really just transitioned my practice to focusing just on goals and accountability. So, like financial stuff, running, fitness, career things, all of those are just a lens that we are looking at, and ultimately we're looking at our goals through that. In 2020 and in 2021, I gave a couple dozen goal setting related workshops to just hundreds of people. And, we were feeling so jazzed to get some control in our life. So I think goals, in the sort of traditional sense, were really something that a lot of us were feeling attracted to. But I think, now a few years later, we're mostly just very tired. And I think the idea for me of doing this Gentle Goals workshop is really coming from a place of the collective and individual burnout I've seen in my clients, in my friends, and, even myself. And, that sort of go that we've been doing for so long is really, for a lot of us, is not really productive. It's not really serving us. And so, instead, we want to kind of be in a place where we can maintain, where we can grow, where we can cultivate, and just kind of operate in a way that feels aligned with our bigger picture without having to be pushing in a painful sort of way. So, so if you're here, I'm sure that is also speaking to you. So, in contrast to the more typical kind of thinking around these highly specific achievement, performance-driven goals, Gentle goal setting is really taking a more holistic approach that is geared more towards slow, steady growth, sustainable and repeatable actions, and greater flexibility and self-compassion. So if you're here, you're probably already on board. And for me, as a high achieving, very like academically oriented in my past school life, and a recovering perfectionist, I don't know about you, but I need lots of reminders to be gentle with myself. So if you relate to that, give me a little clap emoji in the, I guess it's cool that we can do directions. So yeah, so thanks for that. And so we're going to get into all of that. But first, I want to just like take a second, because why do we set goals at all? On a practical level, goals give us some more structure in our days and in our weeks. And ambitious folks, like probably everyone here, we really function best when we have an objective or a target or something that we can look ahead to, something that we can work towards. And ultimately, goals are a way for us to connect with our inspiration, with intention, and really tap into our core values. So we're going to explore some of that today. And and goals are also a way for us to celebrate our curiosity. They give us an opportunity to ask what's possible. And so they can be motivated, or set from a place of like aspiration or inspiration or something, that we want to achieve in our lifestyle, or just like a vision that we have for ourselves and our life. So I'm just going to jump right in and just kind of get into like what gentle goal setting is. But before we answer what is gentle goal setting, let me ask you another one, and feel free to drop your answers in the chat. What would it be like if you strived less? So, like, what's your reaction to that idea of striving less? Like, what are you afraid might happen? Or what do you think would realistically happen? Relief. Yes. Okay. Love it. Failure. Okay. Being okay with certain balls being dropped. Ease. Less stress. Yeah. So like we got a wide range of things going on here. Losing ambition. So there's a lot of kind of like personal value that we attach to how hard we push, right? And how like the striving that we have. And traditional goal setting tells us that our goals should be highly specific, measurable, realistic, time bound. And this kind of goal setting can be totally awesome, and it has a place. But we don't have to have these like kind of striving or push goals going on all the time. And we don't need them in all different areas of our life. And because those kinds of goals can feel rigid, or very like kind of performance driven, they can also lead to this kind of self-criticism, especially if we fall short of where we wanted to be. And so like what happens when we're in that striving place for too long? Like we get burnt out, we get resentful, we get stressed, disillusioned, exhausted, right? Like all of these things, it's like, ugh. And I don't think any of us want that for ourselves. So for me, gentle goal setting is a response to that idea of striving less. And, just kind of an opportunity for us to ask like, what's missing from my current approach to my goals and working towards the things that I want. I believe that our goals should support our overall well-being. They should support our long-term happiness. They should be a source of joy for us, and even working towards them should be joyful. And so gentle goals ask us like, what do we want more of? What do we want to embrace? So gentle goal setting is intentional and inspiring. It is holistic and self-compassionate. It's values and strength driven, and it's also kind of a commitment to consistency, but also flexible. So we'll talk more about that. But gentle goals tend to be a little less specific in terms of timing and outcomes. They can be a little bit more general, and they're deeply connected to like our personal growth, values, cultivating meaningful relationships, and taking good care of ourselves. They encourage flexibility and self-compassion and just like a broader view of success. So kind of creating more space for more balance and joy in the process. So, when it comes to our goals, we need to embrace them and we need to feel energized by them and not let them weigh us down. Some of the things that I've just been able to kind of catch snippets of in the chat, around like burnout and, like reaching towards goals can be painful, that, goals don't always feel gentle. Like all of that stuff is, I think is antithetical to, how we want really to feel about our goals. So, when we're coming at goals from this angle, of, being energized and excited by them, we're more likely to stick with them because we feel more motivated and we feel more positive about them. So because gentle goals allow us to come from a values driven place, I'm going to just jump into a little bit more about core values. So, ultimately, like the goals that we set, or the goals that you set, they're about you. Like, you know, they shouldn't really, ideally, they're not about other people. And so they're about the things that you want. And so, thinking about like what core values and inherent strengths guide your decisions is an important consideration, especially as we were kind of looking at this framework of gentle goals. Because the values, our values inform us about who we are. They one way I heard it described was a value is something that ignites our hearts. And I just thought that was so lovely. Our values are what we are naturally inclined to do or instinctively drawn toward and eager to do. Our values are principles that we live by, live our lives by, and they shape our priorities and the way that we respond to different situations. And when our actions and our words are in harmony with our values, we feel more fulfilled and confident. You know what? Our values often can get overshadowed and squashed down by the different needs and shoulds and things that we get just kind of caught up with. So sometimes I think it can be a little hard to tell the difference between something that is a value and something that is, in this like need or should category. So a couple, kind of ways you could filter is, if there's something that you must have or like you must have it or you must do in order to be happy, then it's a need and not a value. It could be both, right? But thinking about that, like I must have it in order to be happy. If there's something that you did that made you feel joyful when you were like 8 years old, it's probably a value. And if it's something that excites you, but is also maybe a bit scary, that's also probably a value. So you can ask yourself, like one question you could ask yourself is like, what situations and experiences make me feel authentic to me? So we're gonna do a little exercise. So you may need a piece of paper, or you're gonna maybe screenshot the next slide, and you could edit it directly on your computer, tablet, or phone, or whatever. And you've probably done an exercise like this before, but statistically speaking, many of you probably haven't done it too recently. Okay, so we're just gonna take a couple minutes to do this. So. We're just going to take a minute to identify some of our core values, and so as you look at this list, you're going to just kind of let it be automatic, kind of stream of consciousness. Don't analyze, just go with the flow. And this is meant to be reflective of who you are today, independent of other people. So this is just for you. You don't have to turn it in or show it to anybody. So, so just be really true to yourself. And this is also not meant to be aspirational. So it's not meant to be where you feel you should be or where you wish you had certain values. So let's just take one deep breath together. And I'll give you like 1.5 minutes to work on this. So just jot down or circle the ones that call out to you. And then just narrow it down to like the top 10. And then from that top 10, just take it down to the top 1 to 2. If there's anything missing for you, go ahead and you can write that in for yourself. right, just about 30 more seconds. You can spend more time on this later if you need to. All right. So if you feel comfortable, I would love for you to share your top 1 or 2 values that came up for you in the chat. And while you're doing that, like just to reflect on like why this is important. Again, values, they give us a filter for goal setting. They give us a filter for decision making and also for reflection, as we reflect on our days, our weeks, our years. And so tapping into our core values regularly leads to a happier, more fulfilled life. And it helps us to avoid living in, this autopilot kind of place. And ultimately, when we live from our core values, we can be less stressed. We can make more confident decisions, have more willpower to work towards, the things we want to do. And we can also be more compassionate and show up better in our relationships. So, I mean, these are all like wins, right? With ourselves and like who we truly are. So, I encourage you to reflect on this a bit further, after we meet today and, why the ones you chose are important to you and where you feel they came from in your life, like in your history, and how your current life aligns with the ones that you chose. And if you're into this kind of thing, and another couple things you might like are the VIA Character Strengths Assessment. That's a free little assessment that kind of intersects values and strengths. So that's one I really like. I use that with all my clients. And it can also be a helpful tool, I think, for understanding ourselves and like our motivations. And this other thing that I've been playing with that I think is fun is this Live Your Values deck that is illustrated by Lisa Congdon. I never say her name right. Congdon? Yeah. And it's just really cool, like a kind of physical version of doing this exercise. And so that's another little deck if you like having something more tangible. So let's see what we've gotten here. Well-being and understanding, joy, creativity, contribution, love, stewardship, community, nature, harmony, and simplicity. I love how different all of these are. Love and joy, nonconformity, teamwork, compassion, creativity, learning, belonging. So beautiful. Thanks everyone for sharing. So great. Some of my top ones are curiosity, health, openness. So those are some of last time I did those were the ones that came up. And I actually have them on a sticky note here in front of my desk as a little reminder to myself. So different types of goals. So we're talking about gentle goals today, but what types of goals do you already know about? And we're going to get into the main ones that I see are, outcome goals, right? So these goals focus on the end result or final achievement that you want to reach. So they're often tied to some external factors that can be outside of our control. So, if your goal is to win a competition, that depends not only on your own performance, but also on who else is in the room and how well they do. So this can really be a frustrating, situation if we don't achieve that result, even if we made a really big effort. You can also look at outcome goals as like big picture goals. But the other sort of side of that is like the goals that we make in this place can lead to burnout and resentment because they often are not clear enough in terms of the how or the why of getting to that ultimate outcome. And so they can sometimes encourage us to be hard on ourselves. And if you're not clear on your definition of success or the meaningfulness for you of whatever finish line you've determined, those goals can especially wear you down. Performance goals are more within your control because they focus on improving your own performance, and they focus on specific standards or benchmarks that you want to meet as part of achieving a certain outcome. So SMART goals, which you're probably familiar with, also pretty much fit into this category. And so these kind of goals can be motivating because they're more measurable, they're more specific, so you can track your progress. And so some may also have metrics attached, and and they're not bad. Performance goals are not bad. They totally have a place when you have something specific in mind that is clear and within a certain time frame and that you have control over. So these, I think, still are really important. Running a 5K under 30 minutes, scoring a certain amount on an exam. So like those are things that you have more control over, and they can help you work towards them in a more specific way. So process goals is more where gentle goals live. These are about steps, habits, or actions that you take to achieve performance or outcome goals. So you can kind of look at all these goals as sort of like nested within each other. And they may also include things like behavioral or learning goals or experiential goals. And I think, that like focusing on process goals in this kind of gentle goal setting framework can help us to maintain momentum, reduce pressure, and build more of those long-term habits that we're really looking for. These kinds of goals are the kind of actions that help us get to the benchmarks that help us kind of meet these performance goals. So, but you don't necessarily have to have a performance goal attached to a gentle goal. I hope that makes sense. So, ultimately, these are the foundation. These like process goals are the foundation of our gentle goal setting because they emphasize sustainable actions and habits that can lead to growth without the pressure of immediate results. So you can also, under this heading of process goals and gentle goals, you can also consider like learning goals, acquiring new knowledge or skills, because this really emphasizes our personal or professional growth and development. Behavioral goals are, things that are just like kind of practicing or maintaining or changing certain behaviors like mindfulness or reducing social media use or quitting smoking. So these are really focusing on kind of self-regulation. And also, side note, if you have ADHD, self-regulation is often hard for us. And so having more gentle goals and things that allow us to approach things in a more methodical way can be a way of learning and developing more self-regulation. And experiential goals. So like these are focused on having specific experiences like traveling or attending a meditation retreat, running a marathon. These are just really about enriching your life through meaningful experiences and prioritizing living in the moment. They can bring us joy and balance and offer lasting rewards and personal satisfaction. Some other goals that might be under here too are things like related to health or wellness, self-care, or things in our relationships. So there's like no shade on these other types of goals, maybe a little shade on outcome goals. I did put a red flag there, but they all have their place. So, if we're only focused on outcomes and performance, we can become disconnected with those core values. We can become disconnected from ourselves and like what's actually important to us. And I find that this can also really be true for goals that we have over a long span of time, because we may have changed as people and our priorities may have changed, but we're still holding on to a certain goal that actually is no longer a good fit for where we are now. So setting goals with meaning and intention, these kinds of process goals and gentle goals also really encourage us to let go of this kind of all or nothing black and white thinking. And if you have ADHD and or you are a perfectionist or a high achieving kind of person, you are already often combating that all or nothing thinking like all the time. So exploring gentle goals can be a really nice way to soften our edges of that drive, because that all or nothing kind of approach can bite back in the form of like burnout or resentment or just exhaustion. And so we need to find some balance and kind of think about how we're setting goals. We want to stay tuned into our intention and to our values. And ultimately, your goal is to be meaningful to you, for that goal to have power and to have positive energy. Like it really just has to be important to you. And so intention, this is like so important. So intention is the core of all of our goals, regardless of the type of goal. So whether it's outcome, performance, or process, gentle goal, intention is your why. Intention is the filter that you pass your goals through. So being intentional is really about being conscious to the decisions that you're making. It's making a commitment to how you're moving forward. The intention, the sort of core of your gentle goal is emotional, it's soulful, it's heartfelt. And intention asks us to acknowledge what we want, which I think a lot of us, we don't always do. So we acknowledge what we want and why it's important to us right now. If you have another way of thinking about intention, I'd love to hear that. Feel free to drop it in the chat. But, because for gentle goals in particular, we're not focusing on these goals as a means to an end, but they're a way of supporting our broader vision. So, before you get too dialed in to the specifics of your goal, you have to acknowledge what you really want. And it's really too easy for a lot of us to make goals that sound right or look good on paper, that mimic the achievement or success of friends or family or other people that we look up to, or to be striving for things that other people want for us. And coming from intention is really just taking a moment to ask why you're making that decision, and do you feel okay about it? And in that way, intention allows us to get to know ourselves better and judge ourselves less. And embracing curiosity, asking like, what about this goal or this idea interests and excites me? Curiosity is a huge part of the things I talk about in my practice, because it encourages us to let go of the shoulds, the musts, the need tos. And it gives us space to play and explore and learn, and to kind of readjust the expectations we have of ourselves. And it gives us more insight into who we really are. And, and accept that, like, that who we are may not quite be who or what we thought. Uh, and maybe we've changed, maybe we've grown, maybe we've evolved. So, curiosity ultimately encourages flexibility. And that's really important when we're thinking about these gentle goals. The other thing here is that the words that we use really matter. So when we set a goal, we want to avoid absolutes like always and every and all the time, like that kind of stuff. And we also want to avoid vague words or like things that imply lack. So, so some of the examples I hear are sometimes like, I'm not going to go to bed late anymore. Which is not specific, right? Like, and gentle goals can be a little vague, but that's like, I will not go to bed late is not really telling me what I am going to do. So saying I will go to bed, I will be in bed by 11 p.m. is more specific, or it's, it's my aim to work towards being in bed by 11 p.m. as often as possible. So phrase it, in a way that indicates what you are going to do. And, so like how you'll do it and what you will do. So, then there's also like, consider what you can commit to versus what you can or what you want to achieve. So, so like what can and like, what do you want to commit to? So this is like a little bit of an opportunity for you to also explore curiosity about the process. Like, what would it be like if doing this thing or getting to this result were easier? Like, how can I make it easier on myself? Gentle goals, to the point of someone who mentioned something earlier about like, how reaching towards things can be painful or can, goals don't always feel gentle. Gentle goals still require discipline and commitment, okay? But those words of discipline and commitment don't also have to mean pain. They don't have to mean punishment. They don't have to be like this kind of burdensome thing. So when we set goals from a place of positivity and goals that align with who we are, we can have a better sense of what it is that we want to commit to. I think a lot of us tend to take on more than we can or more than we have capacity for. I mean, I do it all the time, every single day, even just what I think I can get done, right? But but thinking about what you actually want to commit to. So, if I want to commit to going to bed at, 11 p.m., but in my mind, I think, well, really, it'd be better if I went to bed at 10. And I sort of said, I've got to go to bed at 10. Now I've created this like kind of black and white thinking around like 10 o'clock is the only good time to go to bed. And going to bed at 11 means I've now failed and I have not succeeded in the thing that I said I was going to do. So I can commit to, however, going to bed at 11. Going to bed at 11 is a little earlier than I currently go to bed. It's not a huge ask. Maybe I can work my way to 10, but for now we're going to start at 11. Okay. I hope that makes sense. So, when it comes to setting goals, I want to remind you that you're the boss of you. So I know we don't always feel like the boss of ourselves, but you get to choose. You get to make the rules. Like, how does my life inform my goals right now? You get to set the guidelines and define what done looks like, what success is. Like, what does doing this successfully look like? And that's up to you to decide. That's not somebody else's definition of what, going to bed early looks like, just to use that same example. So, use this to your advantage when setting goals and, when you're feeling stuck. So, remind yourself that you get to choose for things to be different. And if you haven't been already, I haven't been able to keep up with the chat so much, but if you haven't already, if you have any goals in mind that would make you feel empowered and aligned with your values, I'd love to hear those. And I'm sure others would like to hear them as well. So feel free to drop those in the chat. And so again, your goals should be a positive influence in your life. And this is where the sort of holistic viewpoint of gentle goal setting comes in. It's really natural for us to stack goals in like one area of our life, like looking at these, different categories. A lot of goals, especially with folks I work with, but I think for a lot of us tend to be in like kind of personal growth, money or career, and physical or mental health. And so that's like a lot of our goals are sitting in those spaces. But, it's important to find some balance. And, we have a very broad range of who we are. It encompasses lots of different, different categories, different aspects, and and they don't exist independently of one another. All of these different things influence each other. So so we want to make sure that when we're kind of like setting goals, that we kind of create, I like to say, create a portfolio of goals. We have different kinds of things that we're looking at. And like when I was working with folks on financial wellness, they would come in assuming that all of their challenges are money related, but as their goals and their values, we start to see how all of these things are actually really tied together. And how their view of money impacts their relationship with their partner, or how impulsive spending keeps them tied to an unfulfilling job, or how living paycheck to paycheck causes them so much stress, and how that impacts other areas of their life. So here's just some ideas of some categories to kind of help you build your portfolio of goals. And there's more possibilities than this. So if you can dream it, then go for it. And you don't have to set goals in all of these areas. These are just ideas. And you may, have goals that straddle multiple categories. That's pretty normal. And also, goals can be fun. They don't have to be a burden. Gentle goal setting says no burdensome goals, please. So, some fun goals might be volunteering with an organization that you really believe in, visiting all the national parks. I had a client who was just like, I really just want to read more novels. I spend so much time reading nonfiction books, and I love novels, but I don't ever read them. So, so like that was something that she's been working on. And just the other day she was like, oh, it's really integrated now. I've been doing that and I feel really good. It's great. So, what kind of categories do you find that your goals are fitting into these days? You can drop this in the chat. I'm also creative goal. Ooh, health. I'm seeing some different things in here. Thanks, guys. The point really is like including a diverse mix of goals and different types of goals is, a way to keep you balanced, keep things more enjoyable, and kind of help you build that, that bigger vision that you have for yourself is not just made up of like success in career or success in, like whatever areas are meaningful to you. Like it's all of these different things. All of these are components. So, so have a thought about that. And, and just think about like what could help you feel more balanced. And so just if you need a little like kind of examples or just a different way of thinking about it, you could look at that list of list of values and some of the ones that were high for you, and you could say like, I want to engage this value through certain kind of activities. So for example, if adventure is one of my top values, maybe I want to have like be a tourist day in my town or my region once a month and go do something new. And that would be a way to engage that without kind of it being really tied to any specific like activity. So maybe, one month I go for a new hike, or another month I go to a museum. So like there could be different kinds of things, but a way of exploring something new in my area. Could also be, there could be wellness goals like getting outside, every day, or moving my body intentionally every day. Community goal could be like picking up trash on my walks. So some of these might combine multiple things, right? So like I go for walks every day. And so that was one I was thinking, not every day, but a lot of days. And I was like, gosh, it would be really great if I was like more thoughtful about it in advance and I could pick up some trash while I'm on my walks. So like that's something, that I'm thinking about as a goal, gentle goal I might set. And so, the other big piece of this is integrating flexibility and self-compassion. And that's like a huge part really of gentle goal setting. So we can use our patterns and our past behaviors to help us build a path that feels more flexible and compassionate. And, this is so important because like the path that we take to do anything, to get anywhere, whether, it is one of these like more specific performance goals or it's a gentle goal, we have to build in flexibility because it's rarely like we start here and we get there and there's no issues in between. Like there's always stuff that comes up, right? And whether that's of our own design or, something that is out of our control. And so if we don't build in flexibility, we can, we just are primed for disappointment. And a flexible path allows us to stay curious again. And, because gentle goals are process oriented, we get to stay curious about the process. And so this is a way to be kinder to yourself in working toward your goals. And, again, one of the great things is that gentle goals give us more room to play, like to follow our interests and our curiosities within a certain area or a theme. So like, let's use that to our advantage. And this is also great for us ADHDers, by the way, because we have to keep our interest engaged at all times in order to stay motivated and on task. So the more like opportunity we have to engage in our curiosity as we're working towards a goal, the better off we are. And so, firstly, we need to know ourselves and our tendencies, avoiding comparisons with what we used to be able to do, or what so-and-so can do. Just own who you are and embrace who you are in your life. And so this knowing yourself is not a judgmental thing. This is just in a historical, realistic way. For me, every day I say that took longer than I thought, every single day. And so like, I can laugh about it because it's just what happens. It's just part of who I am. We're all on our own journey. We're all, dealing with our own things. So just know who you are. Consider what might get in the way and identify like the obstacles that might come up for you. So, we all know some of our common things that come up. So this could be, work or family obligations, travel, seasonal health flare-ups, getting bored or distracted, financial limitations, like all sorts of things. We are aware of the things that come up for us regularly. So just kind of acknowledging that stuff can be really helpful when we're thinking about flexibility. In admitting the likely and possible obstacles, we just can get more honest with ourselves. So that's important. So the honesty helps us to plan better, and start to build in that flexibility, because we feel more stuck when we're convinced that there's only one way to get there. But when we meet conflict or don't, gain momentum, we also start to get disconnected from our original intention. And so, like flexibility is important. Sometimes too much flexibility can get us into trouble in a different direction, where we just sort of like stop altogether, right? But it's more likely that we kind of break ourselves trying to get everything perfect, and trying to get everything just, moving in one direction, like we've only seen like one path. So, how we can create flexibility, or like, and how that can look is, again, letting go of some of that all or nothing thinking, that kind of thought process that's like, it's got to be great or why should I even bother? It's got to happen fast or right now or never. So like, can we find ways to embrace a bit more patience, a bit more appreciation of the process, the journey, right? And also like cultivating some consistency, because that's where we're going to build our momentum, where we're going to just start seeing that we're moving forward. And also practicing self-compassion, because this is a way to build trust with ourselves. And so self-compassion is not just something that we practice when we mess up. Okay, so this is, we can use it all the time. So it's like, wow, you really pushed through when you wanted to stop. That's admirable. Like, just acknowledge yourself, right? So like, that's self-compassion too. So think about where you can show yourself more empathy, more kindness. Patience, like be patient with yourself as you do new or difficult things, as you explore new ideas, as you learn. And also, a way of kind of practicing self-compassion is starting over or just starting where you left off. And that's totally fine too. And recalling how you overcame past difficulties is also a way to just kind of put into consideration how you envision your path forward. And I think one of the things that just can be really difficult for us is a goal feels like a promise that we make to ourselves, right? So if we don't meet our goal, we feel bad, and then we kind of feel bad about ourselves. And this happens whether or not the goal still is aligned with how we want to show up in the world. So, goals can get sidelined when we hit a snag. So, taking a little time now to consider what obstacles might come up for you and how you've overcome similar obstacles in the past, or how you expect you can overcome them now, is often a step that a lot of folks miss. So that's something that I think can really be helpful in terms of how you can, how you can reach your goals. And, ultimately, our approach to gentle goals is really a shift in our mindset around goals. And so I just want to remind you that your mindset is a muscle. Okay. So, we forget that we're always learning, right? When we're kids, we're learning all the time and we take that for granted. But over time, our perspective can narrow a bit, and we can take ourselves a little too seriously, and we can hold everything we do to this really high standard. So strengthening your mindset is a kind of learning. It's like lifting weights. We don't go to the gym on the first day, like grabbing the 50-pound dumbbells. We start out with 8 or 5 or maybe 2. And if we are consistent and working on it regularly, we will get stronger. And, gentle goals require a different kind of mindset, a different way of thinking about goals. So, think about what you want to strengthen in your mindset, around maybe it's self-trust or self-compassion, having more courage, and, again, embracing the journey and the difficulties that might come up. And letting go, a little bit, like not holding on too tightly. And so, you can also think about what things you want to embrace, like a beginner's mind, playfulness, curiosity, and wonder, being cool with being a beginner, right? Like that can be really hard for us at times. So, just think, you kind of narrows down to like, what can you give a good effort to? What kind of effort do you want to commit to? So like, what do you want to give a good effort to? And support and accountability is so huge. We've been told that we have to do it all ourselves, but we don't need to do it all of our, we don't need to do it all ourselves, and we can't ultimately. So asking for and accepting it is very important. Encouragement and support is super, is big. So, the people in your life want you to succeed. So let them know how they can support you. So, I know we can sometimes feel on our own and we're not always great at asking for help, but I just, if there's one big thing I want to encourage you today, is I just want you to not feel too proud to ask for help or support. Every person who comes my way inquiring about coaching, I always express how proud I am of them for doing that, because I think we can, asking for support is ultimately a show of strength and not weakness, because we know that trying to push forward on our own can lead to burnout, to incompletions, to frustration, and sometimes a lot of additional time, money, or energy expense. But, you have to ask, because you've got to let people know how they can support you. and don't expect people to read your mind, no matter how well they know you. So, support ultimately is anything that helps you move forward with more ease and positivity. So make sure that you have your own back first, like post your goals where you're going to see them and where you can be motivated by them regularly. You might put reminders in your calendar or planner, or just like kind of words of encouragement, and tracking your accomplishments and progress and, any milestones that you've met. That's really great. And then you can tell yourself that you're proud of yourself, you can do that, and it's important. And then also, share and declare. That's something I think can be really helpful. So sometimes just like talking it out, like verbally process what you're wanting to do. Even if you're just doing that to yourself, it actually can be really powerful. So I want to encourage you to just kind of say out loud the things that you want to do to anyone, and that can really make a big difference. So, think about, there might also be supports in your life that you're not thinking about that you're already taking advantage of. So, like the babysitter who can drop in on short notice when you need a night out, or your coach or therapist who stays very present with you and supports you. If you've been in focus space community sessions, like the folks in the sessions and the hosts, those are like small ways of getting support and staying accountable, and they all add up and they all matter. So, so just kind of consider where there might be some places where you already have support. And I'd love for you to share in the chat, like what kind of support do you want to ask for? And we're going to keep moving forward. I want to make sure we have time for questions. So I'm just going to kind of plow through these last couple bits. But so moving forward, staying on track can be hard because we can get stuck or sidetracked, and we can change our minds, or we can like lose some of our motivation. So to keep moving forward, ask yourself, like, what am I already works? So, something that you've done in the past, or it could be something you've done recently, but what tactics for motivation, like your own motivation, already exist in your toolbox? So, maybe that's certain kinds of rewards or consequences, like body doubling, or just kind of like really baby stepping your way. Like there's different ways that work for everyone. So just kind of think about like what already works for you. Revisit your intention, your why, and also your rules. Like what are, how are you defining success? How do you know when you're on the right path? How do you know that you are doing what you want? So, just be kind to yourself and be realistic. But, the other huge thing, okay, so if you're feeling stuck, this is the thing I tell everybody, do literally anything, okay? Because doing anything at all frees us from having to do everything at once. So this is the best place to start if you're having trouble, or you're feeling anxious, or you're struggling with like gaining momentum. So think about like, what is the least I can do to move forward, even the littlest bit? Do anything, even if it feels insignificant. So, if I want to do, 10 push-ups, and right now I'm doing 0 push-ups, if I do 1 push-up, like that still is awesome. Okay. So because I've done something and versus doing nothing at all. So do literally anything, and define that like first, that next smallest tangible step. Just like we do in our wake up calls, like identifying the first step or the next step is sometimes a huge part of the process. So that's really important. Also practicing, embracing the idea of practice. This is about cultivating consistency, and with process and gentle goals, like consistency is the whole point. So, so just kind of embrace practicing, embrace that spirit of experimentation too, because this is where we're building our toolbox, where we're kind of experimenting with different ideas, different solutions, different possibilities, and ultimately, enjoying the work, enjoying the journey, and committing to yourself. And so visualizing also, if you've ever done visualization exercises, I was hoping we would have time, but we do not. So visualize yourself doing the thing. This is like something that is so powerful. It literally changes your brain. Okay. So all of the best athletes, performers, musicians, they do this regularly because it helps to create familiarity and confidence with the activity, because you are like mentally doing the action, even though you're not doing it physically. So this is something that is like, if you just can start to visualize the steps of you doing the things you want to do, even if you can't do them yet, or you're not there yet, this will help you continue to move forward. So having a regular practice of that is really powerful. If you've done visualization, I'd love to hear about that in the chat too. And then checking in, reflecting, and celebrating is so important because they help us move forward with momentum and motivation. And because gentle goals are a little bit less defined in terms of ultimate outcome, it can be challenging to know if we're moving forward. So having some regular check-ins to make some space for self-reflection is really important. So asking yourself, like, how are things going with my goal? How did I get to where I am so far? What have I found challenging? Do I need to make any changes? Like, those kinds of things can be really helpful. Celebrating your wins, big and small, as consistency milestones. Like, you don't have to wait till the end, whatever the end is, you can be celebrating, and you should be celebrating along the way. Also bragging about yourself. So it's cool to tell somebody else that you're proud of yourself for something, or that you like, what you did. I know celebrating can be really uncomfortable, but it's okay. Like, go ahead and just like brag on yourself a bit. You can ask for a high five or a hug or whatever feels good for you, and also do some fun stuff, like do something that feels fun for you. So how do you like to celebrate your progress and achievements? Even like small things like watching a silly movie, or taking an afternoon off, or going for a bike ride, or like just doing something that feels joyful. I'd love to hear how you like to celebrate. So ultimately, gentle goals, are goals that align with our values and encourage encourage flexibility. And, in return, they can bring us more joy and more balance. And they're also like an invitation to relax our ambitions and enjoy the process and the journey. So I'd also love to hear, any takeaways that y'all have from what you learned today. And also, like, identify a few actions. So I always leave all of my client calls with specific tasks at the end. And so y'all aren't off the hook for that. So I can offer you a few suggested actions as you share some takeaways. But if you haven't already, identify a gentle goal that you'd like to set. Maybe take a few minutes to note any progress you've already made towards that goal. Identify your very next tangible, smallest step, and maybe brainstorm some ways that you'd like to keep yourself motivated, and maybe some ways that you'd like to celebrate or acknowledge your achievements. So if you already know what actions you want to do, you can drop those in the chat too. We're just dropping everything in the chat, and we're going to start Q&A. And so while everybody is dropping all sorts of things in the chat, and Kayla is trying to keep up with all of that, I also just want to share that I do have a few events coming up, and also I have created a little page for y'all too that's going to have some of the things I mentioned, since I talk so fast. Some of the things I mentioned and some of the resources and different questions. I've made a little page for y'all to reference. But yeah, I'd love to connect with you in any and all of the places, and maybe see you in an upcoming event. So I'll just leave that up. Oh, thanks, Kayla, for sharing all of that stuff. So yeah. Takeaways, I see some takeaways are there. Awesome. Yeah, what questions? Oh, I do not talk too fast? Okay, thank you. I'm sure that's not true for everybody. But thank you. So yeah, I'd love to hear any questions or anything anybody has for me, or about any of the things that I mentioned. Ellen asks, any tips on scheduling goal time without then also feeling overwhelmed by all the things on my calendar? I know, right? It can be definitely challenging. And this is where like experimentation really comes in, because sometimes we just have to try a way of approaching things and see if that works or doesn't work. So if putting a bunch of things on the calendar, like for me, putting too many things on the calendar is overwhelming. I mostly like to keep the calendar to like the must do's and the appointments and hard stuff. But I do try to have in there, like Friday afternoons, I try to take off Friday afternoons. And so I find that if I don't define what is going to happen like this Friday afternoon, then I'll just work or like scroll Instagram for 2 hours, which is also not how I want to spend my time. So like I put in my calendar sewing afternoon for tomorrow, because I am working on a few projects and I would really love to spend some time on that. So like now I can look forward to that. So yeah, so I think part of it is maybe like being a little bit choosy about how you put things in your calendar. And yeah, I don't know. I think also just trying some different things. So maybe there's a bit of like specificity around like goal time about like what exactly are you going to do in that time. Glad that was helpful. Um, okay. Ms. OM says they have a question.
Miss, oh, you can come off mute and
Oh,
share.
thank you. I wasn't sure. So, but thank you. This was very, very super helpful. So interesting to me, the whole concept of gentle. So are there any specific categories that you would say lend themselves more to a gentle goals approach versus others? Which
Yeah. I mean, yes, I would say, anything that is kind of like behavior related, like behavioral, or like wellness kind of related things, I feel like things that are like wellness, self-care, like ways that you want to adjust how you're approaching things. So it could be around hobbies, too. I find that where things get a little murky are things that we often are used to metrics being tied to. So like, so I'm a runner, and sometimes I'm not training for anything. And that can be a little challenging for me because I am a bit driven by like knowing I have a race coming up. But I also can be like, well, in this season, I don't want to focus on like running a certain speed or, running a race at a certain pace or whatever. I want to focus on getting stronger in my body. So I'm going to put more effort towards strength training. And like, I don't have to have numbers attached to that. I just want to do it, right? Like, I just want to be like doing more strength training. Or, it could be that I want to focus on my form. And so while I'm running, I'm paying attention to my form. And so the pace doesn't matter. So I think we have to like, so I think you can put a gentle goal into something that has a bit, in our minds often is related more to like performance. But we have to kind of come at it from a different direction, if that makes sense.
I don't want to speak over others, but I have a question inspired by something I saw in the chat earlier. Someone shared that if you're trying to go to bed by, let's say, 10 or 11, you miss that time, and then you're like, all right, forget it. I'm just going to scroll until 2 a.m. What is the gentle way to approach ourselves when we're not hitting our marks so that we don't go so far off of our tasks?
Yeah, great question. I think that's where the self-compassion piece really comes in, because if we are in this place of kind of like, well, I either go to bed at 10 or 11 or whatever, and now, F it, I just stay up till 2, we are getting ourselves into a trap of like, there's only one right way to do going to bed, right? And so if I can't do it the right way, I'll just go the other direction of it being completely wrong. And so instead, if we can say like, okay, well, I didn't get to bed when I wanted to, but now is still an okay time to go to bed, right? Like, it's still better probably, right? Like, I mean, this is, yourself, right? But it's still better for me if I go to bed at 11:30 than if I stay up scrolling, right? And so sometimes you have to like factor a little bit in of like, how will I feel about this tomorrow? Or later or whatever. And so it's like, I feel like there's a little bit of just having to remind yourself that it's okay. Like, I don't have to do this perfectly. I don't have to do this the one right way in order for it to still be okay. So I think that's where that sort of definition of success and like, what are like, if 10 or 11 doesn't happen, like what's the other alternative, right? So like, defining those things in advance, I think, can be really useful.
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to note that we're a little bit over time. I'm happy to keep going through questions if folks want to stick around, but just want to say a thank you to everyone for those who are hopping off at this time. And thank you, Aja. Can get a round of applause here for folks. That was such an amazing session. I think there's a lot of things that we can take away from this and just show up for ourselves more compassionately and energetically, as opposed to some of that strict, rigid feeling that we can get with goals. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks everyone for being here. Thank you, for all your questions, and I'm happy to stay on if anybody has any additional questions, because I know that I went a bit longer than I was hoping for in terms of leaving us time. So, if there are any others.
Thank you so much, Aja. That was awesome. So many great reminders to hear. Really appreciate it.